Good morning, everyone. This is Theo Van Wyk from CDW. Just wanted to let everybody know, I think we're ready to get things going here. Let's then share some good information with you. So just before I kick things off, just one or two quick household items, if I may. Any questions that you have during the during the session here today, please feel free to drop your questions in the question box or the panel at the bottom there. We will be moderating and collecting those, and at the end we have a Q&A session allocated where you can ask John your questions. So we're more than happy to take those and make sure that you get some customized answers and information out of today that's really relevant to yourself. So with that, I'd like to kick us off. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join us today to learn more about Zero Trust. We are extremely excited to have Palo Alto, one of our leading security partners, here today to help educate and guide us through what is an amazing topic and really fundamental to so many of the security elements that we're looking at achieving every day. John, if you could grab the next slide for me, please. So for CDW, one of the big things for us here is that we are a leading IT solutions integrator and services partner for so many of our companies. And one of the key things for us is integrating and managing technologies such as Palo Alto and their platform to help our customers achieve their various different business outcomes. Next slide, please, John. We like to tell people about the Great White North here. CDW has a very strong presence. We're about 900 coworkers in Canada, distributed nationally over 9 offices with local presence in all these offices, so we can reach out and work with you. One of the key things for us here that we're very proud of and that sometimes goes unknown is that approximately 300 of our coworkers here at CDW is focused on ITS, which is our Integrated Technology Solution Services. So these folks focus around selling very special solutions, both security, infrastructure, cloud, and a wide range of other solutions, but then also helping our customers to integrate this and make sure that this works properly. This group also includes a managed services group that can help you manage and take care of your customers. Next slide, please, John. For the CDW security practice up here, that we've been working, as I mentioned, we've been working very closely with Palo Alto, and we've built our partnership. And our security practice today consists of about just over 100 dedicated security professionals. These include everything from essays to delivery to managed services specialists that can help manage and look after solutions. And we are very deeply certified in a number of solutions, including PCNSE and PCNSA on our Palo Alto platform to help support our partner there. And then I'd like to briefly mention as well, we do have a security operations centers so that we can assist customers in managing their solutions as required. Next slide, please, John. One of the amazing things for us is when we started off in our security approach and our venture, we really looked at aligning a model, and in this case, we picked NIST to roughly align our model with. So we created this mantra: prepare, defend, respond, and we firmly believe in approaching security through this thought process. One of the big things here for us that we're so excited about today is having John here to talk to us, because this very closely aligned with Zero Trust and some of the thought and planning that you have to place into successfully securing your network. And again, having this messaging align with us so well is something that greatly excites us, and is one of the reasons why Palo Alto has been such a strong partner for us. Next slide, please. From the PAN-CDW partnership, we started off in 2014 as a Palo Alto partner. We're very proud that in the last 3 years, each year we've been awarded Canadian Partner of the Year for Palo Alto. We're also one of 6 Diamond partners, an authorized MSSP, and an authorized National Traps partner, so we can assist you with very complex and complete Palo Alto solutions and items. We are very deeply certified, as we mentioned before, with a strong presence over here that focuses actually specifically on Palo Alto. And we're also proud to say that we are Palo Alto's authorized training center here for Canada, so we can assist with any training and certification needs. Next slide, please, John. We mentioned the managed Palo Alto next generation firewall and endpoint solutions. So, again, a lot of these solutions, once you implement it and think it through, if you need any assistance with managing it and running it in the long term, we found this as a very valuable service to our customers, and as such, we've built a strong practice around this and is proud to support our partner in this manner. Next slide, please. Now, I'm very excited to introduce you our special guest today, John Kindervag, Palo Alto. We're extremely excited to have you with us today. John has joined Palo Alto in 2017 as a field CTO. He joined Palo Alto after 8 years at Forrester Research, where he served as vice president and a principal analyst for their security and risk team. Now, the one amazing thing with John is he's had the opportunity to walk the different walks of life, everything from architecture to delivery to integration. And so when he talks about these topics, he comes from a background where he really understands the different elements that an organization has to face when they deploy complex security solutions. And this has set John up to become one of the world's foremost security experts. And in his time, he looked at this and looked at some of the items that was missing and started working and creating this revolutionary zero trust model for cybersecurity. And this has become the foundational element of so many talk tracks that you will hear about today in presentations. John currently advises both on public and private sector organizations. And like I mentioned, he works in the actual design and building of the zero trust networks for cybersecurity topics. So deeply integrated, understands the different elements that our organizations and our customers have to deal with. John is also no stranger and media from Wall Street Journal, CNBC, PBS, and then also regularly spoke as the R's such as RSA, TorCon, ShmooCon, InfoSec, and InfoSec World. So without further ado, John, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome, and I'll hand the baton over to you.
Hey, thanks everyone. Good to see you. Hopefully you can see me. Weird time of history right now, right? We're all working from home.
Just a quick audio check there.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, you never know with this stuff, right? So weird time in history. We're doing all these webinars. We're overloading networks. We're overloading webinar service providers, but we're going to talk about zero trust. We're going to put it in the context of strategic engagement. What is strategy? That's the first question that I was asking. And how do we do strategy in cybersecurity when I started this whole zero trust journey 12 years ago? So there are 4 levels of strategy. They're called grand strategy. That's the ultimate goal any entity is trying to achieve. Now, the grand strategy is done by the highest levels of any organization. So your prime minister does the grand strategy for your country. Your CEO or your board of directors do the grand strategy for your business. And then we have strategy. Strategy is the big idea that is used to achieve that ultimate goal. And that's done by the next layer down in any organization. Then we have tactics. Tactics are the things we use, the stuff. And certainly in our business, we're all enamored by stuff. We're all a little bit on the nerdy side, I would assume, to be in this business. That's what attracted us to technology in the first place. And then we have operations. Operations are the way we use those things in order to execute on the big idea to achieve the ultimate goal. And one of my mentors, who was a great strategic thinker, taught me years and years ago that almost everybody confuses strategy and tactics. And this is certainly true in cybersecurity. We think we're being strategic when we're being tactical. And so in order to be successful in cybersecurity, we need to have a strategic vision that we can then push down to the tactical level. Now, this maps to the cyber war that we're all in, and we're all in the same cyber war. We have a business that's adversarial. Other businesses have competitors, right? But in cybersecurity, we have adversaries, and that's what makes us unique amongst all other peoples of the world other than militaries. So a cybersecurity professional is a type of warrior, really. And we all fight the same cyber war. And the reason we all fight the same cyber war is because the earth is flat. It's flat because TCP/IP and the internet made it flat. So we all live in the same bad neighborhood. There are no suburbs in the internet. There's no place that you can go to. I've been all over Canada in the last 3 or 4 years to all kinds of places that I thought I would never go in my life, and places that often other Canadians haven't gone to. And some of them are pretty remote, right? There's some remote places in Canada, but they're still connected to the world's worst malicious actors over very fast networks, and they're not hiding out in those remote provinces. So the grand strategy of cybersecurity needs to be to stop data breaches. Now, this causes some controversy to people when I say that, because one, we have to understand what data is, right? Data is the fuel of the modern economy. And it doesn't matter what business you're in, your business really is interacting with data. And then the other thing that causes problems is this word breach, right? We think of breach as being, oh, somebody got into the network, right? That they got into through the castle walls, they captured the flag. Oh no, it's all over, right? And that's not what a breach means. Breach today means that somebody, some attacker, a malicious actor has stolen data or assets that are regulated by legal and regulatory entities, and they have exfiltrated those things and now have control of them outside of your system. And so GDPR and CCPA and all of these regulatory bodies have redefined the word breach for us. And then we need to understand who the actor is that we're talking about grand strategic. I talk to, say, people who work in the oil business, and they say, well, I don't care about data, I care about keeping my rig running. Well, that's an important thing to do, but that's a tactical thing to do. The CEO of your company is concerned about data breaches of public personal information, or data breaches about, say, the geotechnical survey that might show the next big oil field. So it depends upon where you are in the organization. Not everybody is a grand strategic player. And then we have strategy, and strategy, well, is zero trust. The only strategy in cybersecurity that you can choose from today is zero trust. And that's a bold statement, but I'll explain it in a moment. And then we get tactics, the tools and techniques we use, and operations, the platforms and the policies. I see people who get good tactical solutions but use them poorly. And so we need to be able to have this four-step model of cyber war integrated fully both up and down the stack, so that we have a complete view of what we need to do in cybersecurity. Now, if we look at grand strategy, stopping data breaches, why do I say that? Well, I say that because of the Target data breach. In December of 2013, there was a big data breach. You've probably heard of it. It was called Target. 110 million credit cards were stolen. But most importantly, this is day zero of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity as a business, as an entity, does not exist until the Target data breach happens. Why? I mean, everything before here is BT. Everything after that date is AT, or after Target. So we're now in the year 6 AT, and the reason this was seismic was that for the first time in history, the CEO of an organization was fired because of something that IT did or didn't do, which was allow a data breach. And I would argue that the only thing that IT can do to get a CEO fired is allow a data breach. You know, CEOs don't get fired over ransomware attacks. They may fire people, but they don't get fired. So, hey, when was the last time you saw a Target store in Canada? It's been, since the Target stores in Canada were a consequence of this data breach. They don't like to say that, but they ran out of money to fix Target stores, so they had to leave an entire country. Data breaches are hugely impactful, and that's what we need to solve grand strategically. Now, there was a big data breach in the United States called OPM. I won't go into it too much. It was a list. It was essentially the list of spies that the United States had, and it was so big that the U.S. House of Representatives in Congress issued a report called the OPM Data Breach Report, how the government jeopardized our national security for more than a generation. And in that report, they came out and they said all government entities should start using zero trust. And that's why I'm in front of you today, because at this moment in history, in 2016, I had worked on the designs of about 40 zero trust networks around the world. And my customers, independently of me, chose Palo Alto Networks as the backbone or foundation for that zero trust environments. And so they chose for me where I was going to go next. And so I am the only good guy beneficiary of the OPM data breach. So this is why I'm here today, because there was a big data breach. Now, I said zero trust is the world's only strategy, which is a bold statement. Let's talk about why I feel like I can say that. First of all, we need to understand what isn't a strategy, right? Once we understand what we've been thinking, how we've been confusing strategy and tactics, we can start to begin to think strategically. So what isn't a strategy? Well, expense in depth isn't a strategy. That's our joke at Forrester about defense in depth. We said in a report years ago, expense in depth isn't a strategy. Defense in depth, you spend money you don't have on things you don't need because you don't know what you're protecting in the first place. So if it was about spending money and buying enough stuff, you should be fully protected because you've spent enough money and you've bought enough stuff. You just haven't spent money in the right way with the right stuff put in the right place for the right strategic outcome. And so defense in depth or expense in depth is not a strategy. And then we have tactics. These are all the compliance things, I'm sorry, we have compliance. And these are all, again, all tactical, right? Just lists of stuff that we're supposed to do. More and more stuff. And my goodness, I'm glad I'm not a compliance person. I've done compliance work in the past. I'm a recovering QSA. For anybody who's done PCI work, you know it's a 12-step program. But man, there's so much compliance now, and it's mind-boggling, and it's overlapping, and it inhibits our ability to actually accomplish anything. And then we have best of breed. These are things that are judged by magic quadrants and waves. And when I was an analyst, I refused to do waves because they are not the right way to think about cybersecurity. You don't think about cybersecurity as a collection of independent things that don't talk to each other. Cybersecurity is a system. So when you make your technology choices off of these, these kinds of things, all you do is create more expense in depth. And finally, I have a joke one, I call it hope. I think most people use hope as their risk mitigation strategy. The H stands for put your head in the sand, pretend like nothing's wrong. The O stands for obfuscate reality, pretend like it's not as bad as it seems. P is point the fingers at somebody else, blame them. And we saw that with Equifax, a big data breach, right, where the CEO actually blamed a specific individual who wouldn't patch. He said wouldn't patch anything. We know, if you've ever been in the patching game, that people whose job is to patch, that's what they want to do. They want to patch. So, and then finally, the E is employment journey. And so all of these things are tactics, they're not strategies. Now, zero trust comes from an understanding that I got years and years ago that trust is the problem. What is trust? Well, that's a hard question to answer, but trust at its foundation is a human emotion. Would you agree with me? It's a human emotion. And this human emotion we have injected into digital systems for absolutely no reason. No one knows why we bandy this word trust about like it's candy, but we do. And we talk about it all the time without understanding what it is. It's a very, very hard thing to define, really hard thing to define. But it turns out it's the fundamental problem that we have in all of IT, because trust is a vulnerability. And in fact, it is the world's most dangerous vulnerability because it is the only vulnerability that you have in your organization that is also an exploit. In order to exploit trust in your environment, malicious actors don't have to create new malware, zero-day attacks, all that kind of stuff. All they have to do is get on your network. And believe me, as a former penetration tester, I can tell you that we can always get on your network. It's always possible to get on your network. So what do, right? We have to get rid of that exploit or that vulnerability. We have to mitigate it, because the only actor in your organization who gets value from it are the malicious actors who are going to exploit it for their own nefarious gain. Now, we have this broken trust model where the untrusted side of the network goes to the evil internet, and the trusted side of the network goes to your internal network where all of your wonderful people are. And I'm sure they're wonderful people, right? But of course, we all know that the bad things can come from that evil internet, and boy, they could get on our internal network. So what happens if I can get on your internal network here, right? What happens? If I can get my packet right there, you're going to elevate my privileges and give me attributes of trust. Now, what's a packet? A packet is a collection of ones and zeros as represented by electrons or photons. So all I have to do is get my electron on your piece of Cat6 cable, and bada bing, bada boom, I now have elevated privileges and you've given me these attributes of trust. That's insane. Then we have malicious insiders like Snowden or Manning, names you should know. They were trusted users on trusted devices. They had real multi-factor authentication, better than what you can get today for your company. But no one looked at what their traffic was doing post-authorization. And that's the fundamental problem. Once they were trusted, oh, go anywhere you want to, right? And that is the foundation. So zero trust eliminates all that. It eliminates the idea of trusted users, trusted packets, trusted interfaces, trusted devices. People, though, will say to me, John, you're saying people aren't trustworthy, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying something much more profound. I am saying people are not packets. It is this anthropomorphization that is killing us, this idea that John is on the network. We talk that way, don't we? We say John is on the network. Well, I am not on the network right now. I have not shrunken down into a subatomic particle where I have been transferred via wireless radio frequency to my wireless access point over to the WebEx server so that I can appear on your desktop right now. That has not happened to me. I am not on the network. It is this direct coupling between devices and people that causes the problem. So we need to decouple that and understand people are not packets. And once you can do that, that frees you up to start making some amazing transformations that are not encumbered by these old 20th century ideas of how we should build networks. Now, zero trust is very easy. I see a lot of stuff and I don't even respond when I see it in social media anymore. People who've never done zero trust pontificating grandly about what it is and how it should work and making it sound so complicated that it even scares me. So zero trust is very easy. You only have to know 9 things. There's 4 design concepts and 5 steps. And so it is super easy. I can do it with a deck of cards. Go to YouTube and search for that, and you'll see me build a zero trust network with a deck of cards. Super easy to do. So the 4 design concepts are this. First, we focus on the business outcomes. What is the business trying to achieve? We haven't done that in the past, and we need to do that. Engage with the business. The second thing we do is we design the network from the inside out. Start with the data or assets we're protecting. The third thing we do is determine who or what needs to have access. Need to know least privilege. Neither Snowden or Manning needed to have access to almost any of the data they stole in order to get their job done. And then we need to inspect and log all traffic in real time as that access is happening to make an appropriate policy decision, but we need to do it at layer 7. You cannot do it at layer 3. A layer 3 firewall won't work, and there is no such thing as a layer 4 firewall. Layer 4 doesn't exist. It's just metadata about layer 3. So we do this automatically in policy and PAN operating system, and that's why I'm here at this company now, because I can do zero trust as policy. I need layer 7 technologies to enforce that policy, but ultimately zero trust is a layer 7 policy statement. Now, the best way to understand how this works is to look how the US Secret Service protects the President of the United States. So this is President Barack Obama's 2009 inauguration parade. And so the Secret Service knows 3 things about the President of the United States that we don't know about the data or assets that we're protecting. First, they know who the president is. They don't do presidential discovery projects. Second, they know where the president is at all times. And third, they know who should have access to the president at any given time. And so while they may have a perimeter out there that they use, that perimeter, hey, it was cold outside, right? Look at these Secret Service agents. They have their hands in their pockets. They're just there as the security theater. They're not there to actually do any protection. The protection is done at the bottom of your screen at what I call the protect surface. This is the first fundamental tactical concept in zero trust. How do you build zero trust? You reduce the attack surface down to something very small, manageable, and knowable called a protect surface. So on this day in 2009, there are 4 individuals in that protect surface: the president, his wife, and his 2 children. That's much easier to manage than millions of people. And so this means that the Secret Service can do something truly amazing, which is move all their controls in adjacent to the protect surface. And they do this for the purpose of defining in policy a microperimeter that provides that protection. That microperimeter has a very small policy. In fact, we typically see a 7 to 10x reduction in policy size when we move to a zero trust environment that uses these concepts of protect surface and micro perimeter. On this day, there's only 2 people who can transit outbound of the micro perimeter, these 2 Secret Service agents. Why they would, I don't know, but they could. And there are exactly 0 people who can get inside that micro perimeter at this time. There would have to be a policy update to allow that. So now we've got the protect surface, the micro perimeter done, but what if things change? Well, the Secret Service constantly monitors and updates that. There's a person in here that's gathering intelligence and then sending new policy updates to the controls so that it's constantly being adjusted in an automated way. And this is a zero trust model of executive protection, and it's the best image I've ever been able to find to give you a human analog to what we're doing in the digital world. Now, we need to get next into tactics. Tactics are the tools and technologies that we use. So I leverage Palo Alto Networks plus our technology partners plus our integration partners to deliver my customers essentially off-the-shelf zero trust environments. And we do this using a 5-step methodology. So remember, I said it's easy, only 9 things to know. You've learned the 4 design principles. Here's the 5 steps. So the 5 steps look like this. Step 1, we define that protect surface that I just showed you. What do we need to protect? And the answer is we need to protect what's known as a DAS element. DAS is an acronym that stands for data. There's data you need to protect, like credit card data, healthcare data, personal data, intellectual property. There's applications you need to protect. These applications would use sensitive data, CRM, HR, ERP. There's assets you need to protect. An asset is anything with an IP address and a stack. So though all of the things people are telling you, you need a different technology for your traditional assets, plus then a different technology for your IoT, then your IMOT, and your IIoT, and your OT. And no, you don't. Anything that runs TCP/IP works exactly the same. So forget about all that stuff. Don't create more expense and depth. And then finally, there are services you need to protect, like DNS, DHCP, Active Directory, network time protocol. So we take a single DAS element, we put it in a single protect surface, and now we start building a zero trust network around that DAS element inside of a protect surface. And we have layer 7 technologies that allow you to get visibility into that at a very granular level. Now, we can then, second step is to map the transaction flows. How does the system work together? And again, our layer 7 visibility allows us to understand those transaction flows. The third thing we do is we architect the environment. Every zero trust environment, whether it's on an internal network, in a data center, remote office, home office now, endpoint, public or private cloud, all of it is tailor-made for your organization based upon the protect surface. So it's very hard to say, here's this general architecture. We architect after we know what we're protecting. And again, we have a lot of technologies, plus we have hundreds of partners that we integrate with in this architecture. The fourth step is creating policy. That's where it all comes together, and we can create policy better than anyone else in the industry. And finally, we monitor and maintain that. We take all of the information from our proactive technologies, our preventative technologies. We send it to our data lake, which is the world's largest collection of cybersecurity information in the private sector. We then monitor that. We get new intelligence from machine learning, and we inject that knowledge back into the system automatically to refine each of those 5 steps. So we might make a change to what's actually in the protect surface, or we might add, it might show us we need to add a new architectural element, or it might show us how to refine policy. So we're constantly doing that on a per protect surface basis. Now, a lot of people start their zero trust journey because they've been told they need to do micro segmentation. And when I say, why are you doing micro segmentation? They will tell me, oh, there was an audit finding that said we need to do that. Well, that's not the reason you're doing micro segmentation. That might be the compelling event that forced you to do microsegmentation. But the reason you microsegment something is to protect it. So by defining the protect surface, you know why you are segmenting. The only reason to segment a network is to protect something. Then you connect a segmentation gateway to the protect surface to define a microperimeter in policy. A segmentation gateway is a gateway that segments networks layers 2 through 7 based upon users, applications, and data. Our next generation firewall technology, whether it is physical or virtual, function as segmentation gateways in that environment. So now we know how we're enforcing segmentation all the way up to layer 7. Every attacker knows how to bypass layer 3 security controls. And then once we add centralized management, this is the reference architecture for zero trust. We just add more and more protect surfaces to the system over time. And we can do this non-disruptively because we augment what we're doing in your hierarchical network by building conceptually a zero trust environment over to the side, connecting it to your existing network, and then grabbing other data types, other applications, other asset classes, and other services so that organically your zero trust environment gets larger and larger and your legacy environment gets smaller and smaller. Now we can extend this to public and private clouds as well. Often we started at the data center because we could replace a stateful packet filtering firewall with a physical segmentation gateway. This is our PA series next generation firewall. But we had the rise of public clouds and private clouds, which are the same thing. They're both just hypervisor stacks, one of which you own, the other one that's in the public cloud you don't own. But you're still in charge of maintaining the security for each of those clouds, whether it's public or private. So what we do is we take advantage of the virtual network infrastructure, which is the layer 2 and layer 3 part of a vSwitch, and we do what's called a transparent service insertion of a virtual segmentation gateway. This is our VM series next generation firewall, and now we add layer 7 segmentation gateway capability to every vSwitch port. And this is important because the protect surface is contained up here in the workload. So we do our security up toward the protect surface always, always, always. And then we can add Cortex, our endpoint security to protect the workload from exploitation and get more data. And then once we have centralized management, everything is unified from a policy perspective. And we can do this in any of the major public clouds as well, where we leverage the virtual network infrastructure, deploy a VSG, our VM series next generation firewall, which in my opinion is the world's greatest cloud security technology ever created. And then we can spin up a workload automatically and pull in the policy. So we've automated this process. And now on the back end, we'll tie into the API and we'll get insight and be able to help with configuration management, compliance management, container security, and serverless security inside of a public cloud. Now, as we work remotely, you've seen a lot of people say the VPN is dead. The VPN is not dead. If you don't have a VPN, you're sending traffic, clear text over the internet. So attackers have two attack points. One is the traffic itself, and the other is the endpoint. And so the original VPNs just created a hard shell on the outside of the traffic stream, the tunnel, to reject the ability of the attacker to sniff it. But because traditional VPNs didn't have policy, an attacker could ride that VPN tunnel back to a resource and steal data and wreak havoc. So our modern VPN, Global Protect and Prisma Access, provides layer 7 policy on that endpoint that connects to the VPN. So you actually have a zero trust VPN and you reject the ability of the attacker to use the VPN to wreak havoc and do malicious things across the VPN. A lot of people are going to start using VPNs in this coronavirus time. And what we're going to see is there's going to be malicious actors who have compromised their endpoints and are riding that VPN tunnel back to resources on the internal network and exploiting the trust model because there's no policy up at layer 7 on that VPN traffic itself. Now we get into operations, the platform and the policy. Boy, if you're not doing operations well, you're just not doing cybersecurity. There's a great movie called The Imitation Game about breaking the Nazi Enigma code, and it points out the importance of automating and orchestrating our networks. If you've ever seen that movie, this is about creating this analog computer I show on the screen here called the Bomba at Bletchley Park by Alan Turing, and people didn't want him to do that, but he said something really profound in this movie. And I would encourage you, while you're on lockdown, go back and watch The Imitation Game, but have your cybersecurity professional hat on while you do it, because he says something so profound. It inspires me every day. He said, "What if only a machine can defeat another machine?" And that is true. We have to have machines to defeat machines because our adversary are machines. They're incredibly automated, and they don't have something we have. That's called change control. They don't have any change management, change control. So they're always ahead of us. We're always a little bit behind them, and we have to get in front of them. And so we're doing this by creating a machine that you front end in policy. And the way that policy works is known as a Kipling method rule. So Kipling method is my personal homage to the writer Rudyard Kipling, who gave us the idea of who, what, when, where, why, and how in a poem in 1902. And so we have these unique layer 7 capabilities that allow us to write these rules. And so we can take a user ID, define a who statement. Who is accessing a resource? This is a layer 7 replacement of a source IP address. And then we can have an application ID to define a what statement. This replaces port and protocol based rules. And we have 3,000 plus known application IDs that you can just pull down from a drop-down box. And we can take any custom application and turn it into an application ID. And then with the latest release later on in this year, we're going to have device ID. This comes from our Zingbox acquisition. So we'll know every asset that's on your environment, whether it's a server or a desktop, or whether it's a IoT device or an IMOT device or an OT device, or even a wireless meat thermometer, which was the thing that Zingbox was able to discover and no one else was when we were evaluating which company to buy. And then we have content ID. This defines the house statement. By what criteria are you going to allow this traffic to happen? So that's where we, in policy, turn on services that replace traditional individual technologies that you used in your old defense in depth practice, right? So threat protection is IPS, SSL decryption, URL filtering, Wildfire, which is our sandbox technology. We have DNS security. We have a ton of things that you just turn on as services instead of using separate technologies. So that collapses that stack and makes it, again, a single security policy. And these work for the cloud as well as on-premise. So here's just a couple examples. A user ID of sales going to an application ID of Salesforce. These things are automated, and then all we define is the content ID. How should we allow that to happen? So, for example, we would turn on Wildfire to make sure every single attachment that's going to and from Salesforce's cloud doesn't have any malicious content in it. And so then we take and we add multi-factor authentication, and we consume it as an attribute inside of user ID to create granular policy. Multi-factor authentication is not zero trust, even though some of those vendors are trying to say that it is. And so you need to understand that it's just something we consume in policy. Now, you can start this journey by using Policy Optimizer, so we can automatically, with 9.0 release, our latest major release, turn traffic into best practice user ID, our app ID rules, where we can then tell you who is accessing a particular rule. And this begins to get you into that world of zero trust immediately, because remember, applications are one of the protect surface DAS elements. So this is a great place to start. Now, we use a learning curve to help you understand how to do this. And this was my latest blog post, came out last week, I guess, on the zero trust learning curve. So we look at two separate elements: the sensitivity or criticality of a protect surface and the time on the zero trust journey, to define a curve that looks at this from a per protect surface basis. So the first protect surfaces we do are what is known as learning protect surfaces, right? So early on, we we build a zero trust network around very, very low sensitivity or low critical data so that we can learn how to do this. We can begin to teach people how to do this. You can't do something unless you learn how to do it. And then the next set are called practice protect surfaces. They use a little bit more sensitivity, a little bit more highly sensitive data than the learning protect surfaces, but we're still not at the most sensitive data. That's known as the high value assets or the crown jewels. Once people have confidence in their ability to accomplish this, then we can do the crown jewels, the high value assets, whatever you want to call it. But that happens very early on in the journey. It doesn't take long before people really understand how to deploy a zero trust environment. And then we can focus on things that are less important over time, secondary and tertiary protect surfaces, until at one point you will end up having data or assets that don't need to be in a zero trust environment because they're just not important enough. And all these things then constantly update themselves. And then we have a maturity model that allows you to, based upon a traditional 5-level CMM model, track your zero trust journey on a per protect surface basis, so that you can know in this particular protect surface, I'm here and I need to be somewhere over here. And so you can then start planning this. This helps with project management, and it helps as you report up to executives what you're doing, right? And then next steps. What do you do next, right? Well, first, you build a zero trust center for excellence for the protect surface you're protecting. Then you get engaged in a zero trust workshop. And these are things that Theo and I will be doing together. And then you leverage zero trust professional services, whether that's from us or from CDW. And out of that, we can end up getting into a place where you can begin that zero trust journey. Now, it is a journey. It's not a project, and it will take the lifetime of your technology environment or that particular asset. So don't worry about getting it done. It's not binary. It's not either on or off. It is a journey. And that's zero trust in a nutshell. Now, I want to leave you with one last grand strategic thought. This came from a congressman who was the chairman of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives when that report came out. And he wrote a byline article called Adopting a Zero Trust Cyber Model in Government, in which he said this: zero trust would have profoundly limited the attacker's ability to move within OPM's network and access such sensitive data. Okay, that's my time. I want to open it up for questions right now, so that if you've got a question, I can answer them, and we can start to get some, some interaction, some dialogue going here.
Thank you so much, John. This is Julie from CDW. I'll be monitoring the questions. So if you guys have questions, just please ask them in the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will read them to John. So John, we have our first question. So thank you for the presentation, John. It seems like a lot of companies talk about and want to implement zero trust. But from your experience, is there a good percentage that are implementing zero trust? And are some intimidated, thinking that it will be too complicated? And how do you reassure them?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people think it's too complicated because people who don't want you to do it, because they don't have technology they can sell you to help you on that journey, say, don't do it, it's too complicated, right? Let's get it. There's a economic component to this. But that's why I wrote that last blog post, to show that it's not intimidating. It's a journey. You start it with the first step. You eat the elephant one bite at a time. You, I guess in Canada, you eat the whale one bite at a time, in certain provinces probably. You boil the ocean 1 teaspoon at a time. Whatever your consumption metaphor is, that's what we're doing. So you start small and grow over time, and generally you will figure it out very quickly. One customer said to me, "Oh, this was actually a Canadian customer." He said, "We argued about zero trust for more time than it took us to build the first zero trust environment." So it's actually surprisingly easy to do. It's designed to be easy. I think too many people make things extraordinarily complicated for a number of reasons. My goal for the last 12 years has been to constantly simplify this and make it easier and easier to do. And that's why I came out with my Zero Trust card deck and showed you you can do it with a deck of cards, right? I can design a Zero Trust network with a deck of cards. How much simpler do you want it to be?
Perfect. Thank you. I think we might have another question, but I don't see it there. Theo, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Sure, John. I'll ask you a quick question. This is one that I regularly get as well, and I would love to hear your opinion on this one too. What is sort of, when you look at an ITSM program or the maturity stance of an organization to adopt Zero Trust, and you've already sort of alluded a little bit to this in your previous answer, but what are sort of the top 3 elements of a security program that people should have in place that's key to underpin a proper Zero Trust model?
Well, there's no, from my perspective, there's no prerequisites that you have to do, no maturity level you have to be at in order to do Zero Trust. We'll start with you wherever you are in that journey. So the first thing you need to do is have a desire to do it, a passion for it, a desire to actually protect your company or your, if you're a government entity, that you really want to do real security, right? That's the first thing. And then you have to be willing to readjust your thinking, right? The number one response I get is, oh, that's not the way we've always done it. Well, no, it's not. It's not the way we've always done it. And the way we've always done it hasn't been working. So you have to be willing to change your mindset a little bit. I think those are the top 2 things, because usually what I'm combating is not some other way of doing cybersecurity. It's I'm combating that you're not going to do anything in cybersecurity. You're just wherever I am, I'm going to stay there, right? Stasis. So a lot of times, I'm like that for an object that's at rest wants to stay at rest. I'm providing the inertia to move that stone and get it rolling, because once it gets rolling, then it will continue to roll, and people will find the value. And a lot of the times that I've done Zero Trust workshops and Zero Trust projects, the individuals who are sort of the biggest skeptics became the biggest advocates, because there was a moment, and I love this when I'm working with customers, when I can actually see it in their eyes. There'll be this click. I can see the click happen, and they'll get it, and then they'll go, oh, right? And so that is the most gratifying part of this, is to see that happen. So you don't have to do anything to get ready for Zero Trust. We can do it wherever you are, because of the learning curve, right? This can be something so unimportant that it is completely irrelevant, but you can still learn how to do Zero Trust by starting with things that don't matter.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. At this point, yeah, thanks, Theo, for your question. At this time, is there any other question that you'd like to ask John? I'll give it a minute, and while you do that, want to reassure everybody that we will be sending out John's latest blog after this presentation, as well as information on where to reach any of us should you want to get this dialogue started. Give it 1 extra minute to see if there's any other questions.
So is spring coming to Canada yet?
Well, there's no more snow in my front yard, so that's good, nor in my backyard, but apparently it's snowing in Kingston, Ontario right now. So I'm a little concerned, to be honest.
It's teasing us right now, John.
But, we're going to get there.
Yeah, Montreal is a
Teasing
possibility
us.
of snow later on today.
I live
Montreal
in
is what, Mark?
Texas.
There's an actual possibility of snow later on today, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I live in Texas,
All right.
and it's so exciting when we get to see snow. People come.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's pretty amazing.
We'll send some over to you. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, because we got to make those snowmen, man. When my kids were little and we would make snowmen, it would take an entire yard to make one little like 12-inch snowman. It was really sad, but they loved it. So, well, thanks, Theo, and Julie and Darcy and all you people and Anu for setting this up. I appreciate it, and I hope everybody stays safe. I think we're hopefully, we're, going to flatten the COVID pandemic, just like we'll, think about it. You're flattening the zero trust curve when you get over here. You start flattening it, right? So that was pretty.
Wonderful. Well,
yeah.
thank you for your time, John. I realize you're extremely busy, so we appreciate that. Wish we could have seen you in person, but we'd love to host you in the future in Montreal and or anywhere else that CDW has offices. So for now, I'm going to conclude the webinar. Again, thank you to all our attendees, presenters, hosts, and organizers, and have yourselves a great day. Thank you.